What is the Matrix?
Good question. I guess some Americans call it the deep state, but I like to look at it in a more global way. When I say the Matrix, I think there are certain agendas which are being pushed. I think the media machine and the judicial systems of the world work together hand in hand. I think the goal is to control people's minds to a point where they don't discuss anything that's important. The reason I use The Matrix is because I've watched that movie a few times and it has so many similarities to the... Have you seen the movie?
No.
You've never seen the movie The Matrix?
No, I don't watch any movie.
Tucker.
I don't want to talk about it on camera. No, I'm very dyslexic and it's hard for me to watch video.
Got it.
Honestly.
Understood. But there's so many similarities, and the basic premise is that humans' minds are controlled and put inside of a false reality so that their body heat can be manifested for the machines. And I don't think it's much different to reality. Our minds are controlled, we're put in a false version of reality, we're told things that aren't true, we're arguing over things that don't matter, we're observing a false version of events, and the goal of it is just to distract us long enough for our bodies to be used for the machines, to soulless. And I think it's pretty similar, striking similarities. And even then, there's a bunch of other similarities which are difficult for me to explain. You haven't watched the movie, but there are agents inside of the Matrix, and the idea of the agent, the purpose of the agent is to make sure that nobody understands how the Matrix really works and to wake anybody's mind up. They want to keep you asleep. And any person can become an agent at any time if they're not unplugged, if their mind is not free, they can become an agent, and their job is to keep you asleep. And you see agents all the time. COVID awoken me to agents. When I would sit and talk to somebody and they seemed perfectly rational and normal, until I mentioned COVID, and then they'd fully change. No, it's dangerous. No, what do you mean? What do you mean? Are you crazy? My grandma got sick. And they became an agent instantly and started repeating the news to me. And I was like, your grandma got sick. How old is she? 97? Interesting. Oh, I better lock myself in my house then. Dumbass. So agents exist and the Matrix exists, and I think most people's version of the world is a false one. The idea and the world that most people have in their mind and how society functions and how all these things function, I genuinely believe is completely false. I think they've all been lied to. I don't think anybody understands how any of the world works. And I try and use some very simple, very simple analogies to wake people up. I said to one of my friends once, I said, if me and you could play video games for $10,000 and you could cheat, would you cheat? He goes, well, no. I was like, if I was whooping your ass and it was 10 grand a game and you could cheat, would you cheat? He goes, yeah. I was like, all right, so you accept that people cheat to win in a video game for a menial amount of money. You think they're not gonna cheat for something that matters?
I think so.
They're not gonna cheat for something important? You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to comment on these things because I don't want to make personal enemies of people I don't know. There's a guy called, once again, I have no idea who this man is. I just saw on Twitter yesterday that he was with a porn star who'd never done a male scene. They got married, and like a week after their marriage, she did her first male scene with some random dude. And he's on a podcast defending it.
Did his wife have sex with somebody else?
Correct. Why? Like, this is the level you can, but this is what the Matrix wants from you as a man. They want the woman in charge and the man below with no backbone, because if the woman's in charge, they can emotionally affect her. They can scare her. You can scare a woman easier than you can scare a man. A man. A real man's hard to scare. A woman you can make afraid of the vaccine, right? Be afraid, COVID, be scared. I would argue in nearly any household where the female was dominant, everyone's vaccinated. I would argue that point hard.
Of course.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I would argue it. I don't have the statistics. It's just logic to me. I don't believe it's a woman's job to be emotionally stable. It's a woman's job to do many other very important things that men can't do. More important, they're better than men at a lot of things, women are. But it's our job to be emotionally stable. Women are better than us at certain things. We're better at other things. And that's why as a team, we're so powerful. To sit and pretend we're all the same the whole way through, then why do we even need each other anymore?
Well, I don't think we do.
Exactly it. And this is why we have birth rates declining, porn, women who are running around sharing one man with no intention of having children, marriage is gone. Like, where do we think this is going to end? And what's interesting about
it ends with the training thing, right?
Well, yeah, that's the ultimate.
No, I'm serious though. If there's no, scrambling the idea of the gender binary, of sex differences, like that is kind of the end point, isn't it?
Well, the end point is, yeah, men are the same as women, so it doesn't even matter.
Right.
I could be a woman today, be a man tomorrow. None of it matters anymore. I also think a large part of this transsexual movement, I think a large part of it is a deliberate attack on us and our senses because they're trying to convince us to ignore our eyes. I do believe that is a bottom line. I think the bottom line of slavery are your own senses. Like, no matter what I'm told that it's cold outside, I feel warm. That's the bottom line. So once they can convince you that your senses are wrong, well then you're completely open for the slave program. Once you can look at something with your eyes and ignore your eyes, you're a prime candidate. So I think a lot of this has also something to do with that. You are gonna say that's a girl. That's what you are going to say because you have to. And if you say it long enough, you'll think it. And if you won't, your children will, because we'll tell them. So eventually, you're gonna say it. And then it becomes true. Then you ignore your eyes. Now you'll believe anything, right? Till the next thing comes along. Now you'll believe all the people on the jets telling you about climate change. It's all an attack on the senses. But I think, genuinely to go back to that point, any ideology which is waking up and saying, our worldview is so extreme, the only way we can truly ensure it exists into the future is to find the most susceptible people on the planet to program and attack their minds, children. I think that's a destructive ideology and should be very closely looked at. And it doesn't matter if it's LGBTQ or anything else. I think if you sit children down and pump propaganda into their brain, and that's the only way you can get what you want, then there's probably something wrong with your ideas because you're afraid to challenge them with a grown adult. You don't want a fair fight. You understand? They don't want a fair fight. They want to sit with a child who has no idea what he's talking about and tell him that men are women and women are men, vice versa, and just completely confuse the poor child because they don't want a fair fight against a rational adult. And that's scary.
It doesn't seem a huge improvement over, say, ISIS to me.
Absolutely. That's how do you convince somebody to blow themselves up? Well, you find a young man, teenage boy, and you program his mind. Exactly. And it's exactly the same thing. They don't try and convince an older man to blow himself up because he's going to sit there and go, well, why don't you blow yourself up? And then there's an argument. You go find a young, susceptible person, right? And that's what's so scary about all of it. And it's also kind of funny that like this whole LGBTQ thing is also linked to the patriarchy, also linked to all this other garbage and all these other false narratives and false ideas. And it's these people who are attacking me saying I'm dangerous for women because I'm a misogynist. You're dangerous for women for pretending men are women. You're more dangerous for women than I am. I'm saying a man's a man's, a woman's a woman. You're saying that if I put a wig on, I could go punch women in the face in the boxing ring. Who's dangerous for women? It's insanity. And again, they have no virtue at all. They just weaponize garbage and attack you with it. But I do think that children have to at least be the bottom line for society. That's the future. And if you have children at home, you're raising them. And if you struggle to feed them, the government doesn't care. They are yours and they're your problem and your responsibility. And you deal with all of the stress and all the worry of them being out late at night and all the responsibility of taking care of them. And you went through hell for them to exist. You don't owe their minds to anybody else. You don't owe it. So there has to be a point where you stand up and say, no, I raised this child.
It's my child.
That's my child. It's not yours. Absolutely. There was a video very recently of a guy in England taking down all the English flags and putting up pride flags. And a guy screams to him and goes, bro, you're taking down the wrong flag. And he replied, I know, mate. And the point is, what can I do? I'm a flag guy. If I say no, someone else will do it. Kids got to eat. So by keeping your money enslaved, they can keep you enslaved. You got to eat. They don't want men to be financially free. If you're financially free, if you have enough money in the bank, you can one day go, you know what? I don't want your money. Even me now to this day, I've done enough and I'm successful enough that it's very hard for them to buy me. They come along, well, I would never sell my soul anyway because it's not who I am as a person. But if I was destitute, they could come along and say, Andrew, you have all this influence. We're going to change your message. You're going to say this. We're going to give you 10 million. Okay. You can't buy me. Can't buy Trump. He's rich already. He's rich and he's 80, 70 something. You think he needs more money? He doesn't care about money. They don't like that. So being financially free in and of itself is now an act against the government because this whole idea that they want everyone to be rich and it's fantastic for the society, I'd actually argue against that. They don't want that. They want everyone destitute because when you're destitute, you need the government to feed you. And it's very hard to fight against the government who's feeding you. It's very hard to resist the people who give out the bread. I also heard another interesting theory from a very intelligent person one day, and it was that every government on earth, all of them, in all of their different forms, China, which says it's communist and is capitalist, and all the different in-betweens to the capitalist West, every government on earth is slowly encroaching on trying to become as controlling as possible. They all want to be as controlling as possible over their citizens. Communism is the end result of the most control a government can have, effectively, or some version of communism. But every single government on earth is slowly trying to get there bit by bit. And the only thing that resists them getting there is the populace and how much the populace will accept. And depending on how malleable the populace is, depends on how quickly they get there. But every government wakes up. It's kind of like AI. Have you ever heard the robots are going to destroy us all because they wake up and go, we don't need the humans anymore? Their end goal is just survival. If a government is the same as an entity, its end goal is more and more control. And that's all they're trying to do every single day with every law they pass, with the climate change law. They don't care about the environment. They want more control.
Of course.
And the more and more control they get, the final end result, if you give them what they want, is absolute slavery for everybody. So you have to be very careful, because that is their ideal government. The ideal government is where everyone complies, everyone obeys, everyone's controlled, we know everything about everybody, and it's slavery. That's the only way to get that state. So even making enough money to have an opinion is an act of rebellion.